قبل ما نبدأ الحلقة خليني أقول لكم إن The Product Live و Product Plus بقوا strategic partners. Product Plus هو مجتمع للبرودكت مانجرز في مصر والشرق الأوسط، بس مش بس البرودكت مانجرز، ولكن كل التخصصات التانية اللي بتشتغل معاهم زي الانجينيرينج يو اكس ديزاين وغيرهم. وبرودكت بلس بتعمل ميت ابس بشكل دوري لتبادل الخبرات وتبادل المعرفة، وكمان ابتدت أول برودكت مانجمنت فوكس كونفرنس في مصر، وهو دي MENA Product Summit، وإن شاء الله هيبقى بيكرر في السنين الجاية. بس كمان مش دي بس الحاجات اللي بتعملها Product Plus، في حاجات تانية جاية كتير هيتم الإعلان عنها قريب. و The Product.Live كميديا بارتنر وستراتيجيك بارتنر لبرودكت بلس هيبقى مكان دايما بيقول ايه الاخبار الجديده وبيتكلم مع ناس كتير هم برضو بيتعاونوا مع برودكت بلس في زياده المعرفه بتاعت مجال البرودكت مانجمنت. برودكت بلس و The Product.Live اجتمعوا هما الاثنين في الشراكه الاستراتيجيه دي علشان الاثنين عندهم نفس الهدف، وهو ان احنا نانلوك البرودكت مانجمنت بوتنشال في المانا ريجن، وان احنا نساهم في تطوير الكاليبر اللي موجود وتطوير المهارات عن طريق تبادل الخبرات وتبادل المعلومات، وكل بلاتفورم على طريقته، واحنا الاثنين بنكمل ايكو سيستم كامل هدفه الفيجن اللي انا لسه قايلها لكم. هتلاقوا في الديسكريبشن تحت كل اللينكس بتاعت السوشيال ميديا بلاتفورمز اللي موجود عليها The Product Plus، وكمان طبعا هتلاقوا اللينكس بتاع Product Live. ميك شور ان انتوا بتفولو الاثنين بلاتفورمز علشان يوصل لكم اخر الاخبار بتاعت كل النشاطات اللي ليها علاقه بالبرودكت مانجمنت ديفلوب في مصر، وقريب جدا في دول تانية في الميدل ايست. ودلوقتي يلا بينا نبتدي الحلقه. Hello and welcome. Today we have a really great guest. Someone who doesn't only know how to build a product and take it to the end, deliver results and impact, but also how to take care of the customers and to reach customer delight or user delight. Building delight in a product is not something that comes naturally when you are first trying to build an MVP, trying to reach specific functionality or optimizing for commercial metrics, but it's rather a qualitative impact that you are hoping to get out of it, but also definitely it has impacts commercially and on the business metrics. Today I have with me Nesrine Changuel. She is an really experienced product leader ex Microsoft, Google, and Spotify. I'm not sure about the order, but she is one of those experts that took the topic of product delight and really nailed how to perfect this model, how to build products around it, and how to make sure that it's not something that gets forgotten throughout the product life cycle. So welcome, Nesrine. I am really honored to have you on the Product.Live podcast.
Hi, Omar. It's my pleasure.
So I want to know, tell us a little bit more about your background, your experience, and how did you reach this very niche and specific area of product delight to make it your specialization? What got you obsessed with it?
Sure. Happy to share. Thanks for the intro. So my name is Nesrine. I'm based in Paris. I am a product coach, meaning that I help product leaders and organizations hopefully build better product, more lovable products. And when it comes about my background, I think, so I started as an engineer. I've been studying electrical engineering in my early days. And then I got myself deeper in tech because I did a PhD here in Paris. I've been working on broadcasting, signal processing, and compression. So actually my career started as a researcher. I was a research engineer for about 5 years. And then let me tell you the story. I know maybe not everyone is aware about that, but I was applying for a researcher job as part of Microsoft in London. And the recruiter reached out to me and said, I know you didn't apply for this at all, but we have a PM job in Sweden at Skype. It's like, okay, what's the connection between what I applied for? But you know what? I went through the process, and that's how I get to learn what it is to be a product manager. So I had zero knowledge, I had zero information. And throughout the interview process, that was quite long, by the way, I got to read some scarce resources, by the way, not many at the time, very, very little. I'm talking about 13 years ago, by the way. And I got to move to Sweden. I started as a PM at Skype. We have been working on the video part of Skype. And I'm talking about the real Skype, the Skype that everyone loved at the time. And I see you smiling because we all loved it. It was a great solution, especially for students who had very challenged calling their, for example, parents or friends across countries, and having like to call with a regular option was extremely expensive. So Skype was the solution at the time. And so, for example, just for reminding about my age, maybe we built group video call at Skype. So when I started, it was only one-on-one, and then we introduced things like group video call, and it was an amazing time. And being in Sweden, I wanted to explore other media areas. So after 4 years at Skype, I moved to Spotify, and I've been the product lead for the Spotify media tribe, meaning that I've been responsible for you as a Spotify user having the best media experience independently of your device, your network, your country, especially that at the time Spotify has been expanding like crazy on more and more regions from the world. So it was necessary that the experience and the media quality is the best. One of the key feature that my team and I developed is video podcast. We called vodcast at the time. So we wanted to enhance the audio quality by adding other means of media. So we introduced video into that. But then COVID hit, and I got to meet a great product director at Google, who actually suggested me to join Google Meet, because Google Meet, it was a crazy period at the time. Like, you can imagine moving from the office to 100% remote. So there've been a lot of investment into making Google Meet more and more adapted for the remote. So I joined Google Meet. We have been building features like background replace, noise cancellation. I guess you guess why we implemented all those.
Yeah.
They became a must-have, but before it was not that much that must-have. Maybe 2 years ago, I moved back to Paris, still within Google, but I moved to Chrome. I've been a product manager at Google Chrome as part of the Paris team. And last year, I decided to leave Google and do more of what makes me happy, which is coaching others, teaching knowledge, spreading insights. So nowadays, I picked a topic that is extremely close to my heart. You asked me about why this topic. So this topic is quite particular for me because I've been doing it for almost 12 years without giving it a name. So I am, in addition to being a product manager, I always wanted to be on stage. Like, I always been acting as active speaker or public speaker. And one day, one of the conference organizers told me, "Hey, Nesrine, we want you on stage, but we want you to come and tell us what was in common between Skype, Spotify, and Google products. Like, why those products so well known, so successful?" And when I did this exercise, because I found it like interesting and challenging at the same time, I found that what made those products so successful is the fact that we have been investing heavily as a product team on not only solving functional needs from our users, but also solving for their emotional needs. So what I call today product delight is the fact of creating emotional connection between the product and the user. And if you manage to do so, your product will stand out. Your users will love the product, will get more connected to the product. They will be more loyal. They will talk more about your product, and it will be much harder for them to switch to another product. So if you get to that target and you manage to do it, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's so rewarding. And that's why those products are successful.
That's an amazing flow of how your experience developed, and how did you reach that alignment between the common thing between all of these products that you worked on. It's not only that you love this topic of product delight and you're evangelizing for it, but also you're writing a book right now that should be ready soon to talk more about this topic, and to also mention some examples and use cases and so on. So, like, without spoiling what is in the book, of course, but I want to understand more about, like, how could we structurally understand what product delight is, really, and how to think about something like the emotional connection with the users as a tangible thing. I don't know what to call it yet, but a tangible thing that it could be measured, could be optimized for, and so on. But let's start by really understanding what is product delight first, and then we go into the specifics.
Perfect. Okay. So the good news is that when I left Google last year, I got plenty of time to do things that I'm passionate about. And since I had that topic in my mind, I wanted to put most of my energy trying to understand what it is and how to make it actionable for others as well. And not only like exclusivity for large companies like Microsoft, Google, etc. So I did a bit of research and I put my researcher hat again. And it was a pleasure to step back again on that. And I started reading what exists. What's among the existing books and studies that reveal something about this emotional connection? The first thing that I realized is that there are plenty of books about emotional connection among designers, among marketers, but nothing for engineers and product managers. Nothing. So the topic is already so well known and well understood among designers and marketer, but the fact that engineers and product managers don't get it yet makes a gap in the communication. So that was the first revelation that I found. The second thing I found is that, which is even more impressive, is that I found only over the last 2 years, I'm just talking about the last 2 years, there have been giant firms who studied the emotional connection and the impact of emotional connection on users' adoption and product adoptions. And who are those giants? These are McKinsey, these are Deloitte, these are Capgemini, and these are like a Business Harvard review, and they all studied the same thing. What does that mean? It means that it's a topic that starts to become more and more adapted and discussed among business. And it also means that there's an opportunity here, because out of the study, let me give you a quick summary of what I found out of these reports. These have been like long reports. I found that, just to summarize all those, that if you have a product that is emotionally connected with your users, you have twice chances to get higher retention, higher referral, and higher revenue. It means that you can double your revenue, you can double your retention, and you can double your referral. Could you imagine just with this small thing? I mean, it's considered small thing, but I will get to the how later. You can double those crazy business metrics. So for me, when I found and I read through all that, it was mandatory that I have to write something about it. I started to acquire more and more, let's say, research topic and research insight. And I wanted to put my experience, like my personal experience, like my Skype, Spotify, Meets into it. So how can I blend this and get a book and I offer it to the community so that people can have a how-to book so that they can implement that in their product too. So that's the history about how the book started. So maybe you want me to get to how can we get the sense? How can we start? Right?
I actually, sorry to interrupt you, but the part that I want to understand more actually is like, how would you define, in at least in one sentence or something, product delight? Because you mentioned emotional connection. Is there other components to it that puts together
Yes.
this concept of delight?
Yeah. If I need to define, I would say two things. So you have to remember two bullets. The first one, the product should exceed expectation. That's number one. And the number two, it should anticipate your need.
Okay.
So as a product manager, that's why it's not that easy. You should not only honor what the users are already asking you for, you should come up with solutions that go beyond. It should create a bit of positive surprise. By the way, if we go back to the theoretical definition, do you know that delight, by definition, is the combination of two emotions? Number one is joy. Number two is surprise.
Okay.
Just think for a moment.
Yeah.
If you are experiencing joy plus surprise, you're delighted. Let's go away from theory again and get back to practice. So if you are a product manager and you're offering a solution that go beyond expectation and at the same time anticipate the need, you're already creating this type of positive surprise. So that's in terms of how can I define it. But then if we need to put it more into the product jargon and the language that we're using, I would say we are extremely good, and there are plenty of books to help you to do that, in identifying functional needs.
Okay.
Like you're building a product, let's think about Spotify. Functional need is to listen to podcasts or to listen to music. These are functional needs, and product organizations are really good at identifying them. But a good, delightful product need to also to honor for emotional needs. Let's go back to the Spotify example. What are the emotional needs for Spotify users? They want to feel connected. They want to feel less lonely. So sometimes I put Spotify because I feel lonely in my office and I need to get a bit of company, or because I want to feel connected and part of something, or because I want to be more productive, because that's how I get more productive. So the product should, at the same time, of course, solve for the functional need, but also solve for the emotional needs.
Okay, that puts it in perfect definition. Thank you so much for explaining this. So you were about to start and to go deeper into how to do this. So the mic is yours.
Okay, so how? I would say we can summarize that onto 3 steps. And throughout this writing journey, I came out with a framework that I'm detailing in the book. And the framework is called the Light Framework. And it's actually a 3 steps framework. By the way, the good news is that you don't have to change anything about your used framework or your process, because I know how much PM are frustrated from, okay, another framework. No, it is an enhancement to everything that you're doing today. It's absolutely not a change or whatever. Step number 1 is that if you're already doing discovery and you're doing user interview, great, you're doing a great job. But I want you now to enhance your user's interview by trying to assess and identify the emotional motivators. This means that once you do your user's interview, try to pay attention to what motivates users at the emotional level. It's like, why do they use your product? Not from a functional perspective, but for emotional perspectives as well. Are they looking for company? Are they looking for comfort? Or are they looking for, so what's the emotional motivators behind using a certain product? This, of course, requires some open-ended questions. And there is a technique that I can share today. It's called motivational interview. So if you Google it, you will find some insights about how to use that. But the idea is that you listen and you pay attention to what people are saying when you ask about how did they feel about using the product the last time, or what did you feel about having or not having this functionality. So these are some additional questions that you insert in your UXR so that you can assess. So step number 1, start by assessing and identifying emotional motivators and write them down. You don't have to do anything in the first step. Like, just write them down, have a catalog of what motivate your users. Number 2 is look at your backlog. I guess, Omar, you have a very busy backlog with plenty of features. Look at your backlog and take your features one by one and ask the question, among those emotional motivators, as well as the functional motivators, what this feature is solving for. Is it solving for any of these emotional motivators? So if it is solving for only functional motivators, then it's what we call low delight feature. If it's solving for only emotional motivators, is what I call the surface delight. I will give you an example later on. Mm-hmm. If it happens that you have a feature that solves for both functional and emotional motivators, that's usually called deep delight, and that's where you want to be. So surface delight, I'm having an Apple Watch, for example, and it was just experienced at that last month. It was the New Year Eve. And when the clock was midnight, I had fireworks on my Apple Watch. I don't know if you had that or you've seen that somewhere. And if you click on it, you get Happy New Year. So this is surface delight, meaning that it's not impacting any functionality. It's not giving you any enhancement to the functional needs, but it's only giving you a joy and a smile. So that's surface delight. And I'm not an advocate for putting so much surface delight in your product. You just need to be mindful when to put those surface delight. Otherwise, it's not that much impactful. Deep delight is, I will give you one example that I usually use and I love, is Smart Compose in Gmail. So if you're using Gmail and you're trying to answer an email, it's giving you some suggestions. And I love this because it's at the same time helping you to achieve your functional goal, which is write the email, and at the same time relieving you from thinking. So you're getting some pre-composed answers. So the second step of the framework is to visualize your backlog and see how much do I have low delight, how much do I have surface delight, and how much do I have deep delight. And I love this step because most of my clients that I coach today, when they do the exercise, they realize like, oh my God, I have only low delight, or it's 95% of the features low delight. And it's already a great start because it's an awareness exercise.
You acknowledge
And the
what you
next,
have. Yeah.
exactly. And the next step is how can we move those low delights into deep delight? So, which usually I detail in the book, like I call them 9 delight enhancers, and what are the techniques that could be used. Some of them are very cheap, very well known, some are not. And how can I move those low delight into deep delight?
Okay, that is a very powerful framework. I want to dive deeper into one specific aspect from going back to the standard definition and the two things that you mentioned. The second was that we are serving for anticipation, right? We're providing something that is not expected, or I'm serving for a need that is required somehow. So I would imagine that in order to maximize this, it has to be somehow unexpected. Somehow I didn't expect, as a user, I didn't expect that you know that I need this.
Yes.
And that's the maximum delight that we could achieve. And the part what I really want to zoom into, like starting with the research and so on and so forth, in the discovery phase, you will get insights of people asking for things directly. And as product managers, the standard thing to do is let we continue designing and discovering and so on until we understand what do we need to build, because customers generally ask for very direct needs that they think that, or direct wants that they think, but maybe they need something else. But also, like within this space, it's already hard enough to figure out what they need from what they said they wanted.
Yeah.
But also how to figure out the extra mile that will not be expected. Because at the end of the day, as a product manager, I'm also a person who might be using the same experience. And how do I expand my imagination with my team and so on to think about delightful factors that would delight me as well as the user personas that I'm serving, especially that I might not know what would be delightful for everyone.
Yeah, that's a very fair and reasonable question. And we are all told that we need to know our users. And you need to know your users, you need to know your users. There's no magic. I mean, the more you know your users, the more you can honor them. And I would say it's not only about knowing your users, it's about understanding them. So there's an additional dimension there. So if I think about, like, for example, family members or my husband. Since we know each other very well, and when I have to offer a gift, I anticipate the need. I know more or less what makes him happy or what doesn't makes him happy. So the fact that we know each other quite well makes the gift, or let's think about the gift as the product, makes it even more attractive and more delightful. That's like just as a reference. So I think it's extremely important to start having this mindset of trying to evaluate behind those asked feature, what's the exact emotional needs that the user want to honor. Like, is it because they want to be more productive, or is it because they want to have less time to work on? If it's a B2B, for example, they ask for a lot of features, but then when you dig, you realize that what they really want is to have a faster flow because they want to finish the task very quickly. And it's not about the feature, it's about getting the work quickly and in a less effortless manner. So I would say it's all about having a regular cadence and asking the right question. Please don't ask questions like what are your pain points when using the product. You will not get the right answer about that. You will get just random ones. And I realized throughout my experience, like when I did all those users interview, the emotional motivators are sometimes hidden. People don't know. It's only when you talk to them then you start to realize them as an observer. Let me give you an example. I worked at Google Chrome. And when I worked at Google Chrome, we took one piece of challenge that was tab management. I don't know how many of tabs you have open on your mobile, but I'm pretty sure you have plenty of them. I'm one of those people that I don't even know how many tabs open I have. So on desktop, it's not that complex. You see them, tabs are open for productivity reasons. Okay, left there. On mobile, people leave tabs open for complete different reasons. You can leave tab open because it's an unfinished task and you want to get back to it, or because you just didn't thought about giving it open or not, so it's there. So we did an extensive user interview, and we interviewed plenty of people who actually have more than 50 tabs open. You just try to see. And we realized throughout the interview, and that's a funny story, I love talking about it, because when we did the user interview, people started to, we said, can you share your screen? And people share their screen and they are comfortable and they are happy. Until the time we say, okay, so you have 85 tabs open, and they are extremely embarrassed. We could see that from their face. It was clear. Like some people from the interviewee who actually said to me, actually, I usually don't have that many open tabs. Okay, you don't have to justify. So there's even a feeling of shame.
Yeah.
And for me, it was gold, because I had to take note that, okay, the emotional motivator is, and there's a demotivator here, which is a shame. And then we had to look at that problem, or we had to come up with a solution that not only solve for managing tabs, but how can I make my users feel more comfortable with the product and feel more connected with the product instead of having this shame. So this is one particular example of the more you talk to your users, the more you see their face when you talk to the users as well. It's not about survey and these kind of survey, by the way, will not help you identifying emotional motivators. It's mainly face-to-face user interview. And to continue within this story of what we did about tab management, we created a feature that's called inactive tabs. So if you have Chrome on iOS today, you will go scroll up to the tab grid, you will find inactive tab groups. And actually within that group, you will find tabs that were not visited for the last 21 days. Actually, every tab that you did not touch for the last 21 days will be within that group. And you know what happened? The number of tabs open that you have down in the app will only reflect those that are outside of the inactive tabs. So there is a psychological relief. Instead of having like 120 tabs open, you will only see the tabs open within less than 21 days. And we realized when we did the study and the measurement later on that there is a relief and there is a positive emotion out of that small feature.
Okay, I have so many questions now.
Go ahead.
I hope it's okay that we deep dive into this use case, because I have so many questions and I have light bulbs and everything. So first of all, thank you so much for mentioning that the form of research where you could capture this kind of emotional connection is user interviews, because I was about to ask that question. I think, yeah, it makes sense. Like I have to see the person to read their emotions, to understand their emotions. Kind of like quantifiable research based on statistics and numbers, it doesn't convey that, right? Okay, so thank you for proactively mentioning this. But I want to deep dive a little bit more into this case, if that's okay to share. Because I have a couple of different questions. First of all, I'm definitely one of those people, like always I'm using Chrome and iOS, exactly what you mentioned. And like my count is always 99 plus. I don't know why. I just don't think about that I need to close a tab. I do something and I just close Chrome. But I'm not ashamed about it. Like it's okay.
Because you're not showing it to anyone. If you start showing that, then you will feel that
could
shame.
be a problem, yeah, with the history, of course. But a really important question here I want to ask you, because I've never noticed that feature that you mentioned. That's the first time I hear about it. And I don't know why is that. Like, I will definitely look into it and try to find it after we finish this session. But it got me thinking about, okay, so you had you did research, you had a hypothesis, and how do you measure how effective this hypothesis was compared to this example? Because maybe not everyone noticed that something like this is there. If I don't even notice that I need to close my tabs, and then there is the easy way out of like, okay, press on the numbers, close all tabs, and that's it. I understand I'm a specific persona that doesn't care, but maybe definitely there will be other people that they need to track their tabs. There are no open topic stuff like this. But how do you measure how effective and how delighted users were with something like this? Is there a way beyond running post rollout user interviews in a more quantifiable way that also could justify some impact or some ROI on the investment and the effort that was put there?
Thanks for mentioning that you're probably a special person about managing your tabs, because actually you're probably one of the you belong to one of the persona that we drawn. So when we did that study at the time, we realized that some people don't care. Some people would be scared about losing some open tabs. Like when we asked them, hey, what do you feel about us closing all your tabs after 2 weeks for non-use? Let's imagine you have tabs that they will never, and some will just get scared. They will just jump out of their chair, like, don't even dare touching my tabs, because they will not go and, as you did, you said you go and click on close my tabs just in case maybe there is a tab that is extremely important. I don't want to miss it. You see?
Yeah.
So the perception of managing tabs vary crazily, like, between people. And I want to highlight here that when you do your personas, we're extremely used to the behavioral segmentations.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very well-known technique. By the way, the first one is how do we call, based on age and gender, etc. So that's the segmentation number one.
Different demographics.
Demographic, yes, demographic segmentation, the worst. The number two is the behavioral segmentation, which is how users use the product, and always quite vocal about motivational segmentation. Is like you segment your users based on what motivates them to use the product. So it's a little bit another dimension. So when we did this type of persona, we realized that our very first solution, which is closing tabs that are not being visited for the last 21 days, was no way, because some people will scream. So we had to come up with other options and then test them and see how people react about them. And the fact that you put them somewhere in a group so that people can access them anytime was a relief. Like, people felt like secure. I will be able to find my tabs even if I will never go there at all during my life, but it's there. I know it's there. So your question was, how did we measure? First of all, we showed those prototypes during some concept validation, and we tried to ask, how do you feel about not having your tabs anymore, or about Google Chrome closing your tabs, or about having them in a group, or about, it's about trying to evaluate the emotional jump or gap toward the solution. And then we built the solution, and we did, of course, an A/B test. And there is a technique, I think it's quite specific for Google. It's called the HATS. Maybe, I don't know how much you heard about it. HATS stands for Happiness Tracking Survey.
Okay.
HTAS. The good news is that it's public, actually. It's not that, it's internal in the usage, because it's extremely well used at Google, but it came out of a research lab at Google, and the research paper has been published, and everything is public about the technique. So it's called HATS, Happiness Tracking Survey. And as the name clarified, it's about evaluating not specifically the happiness, but the emotion related to a specific feature. So think about CSAT. Maybe you know CSAT, like customer satisfaction score, but this is more specific toward the feature, and it's measured over time. So you measure the HATS metric before launching the feature, and then after you launch the feature, and then a couple of weeks after that, to see if the happiness or the HATS metric vary over time or not. So we don't only look at retention, engagement, and adoption of the feature, how many people go and visit the inactive tab groups, etc., but we even look at that HATS metric in order to see if there is any change in the perception of our user toward the product. We want to make sure that the users always feel good about the feature that he or she is using.
Okay. And another part of this question was about tracking the adoption and so on. So for the target groups that you validated that this would be useful for them, definitely you could measure adoption for them somehow. But also for the other groups, would you still be tracking if they have shifted somehow?
So for this particular feature, there's been no much shift. There's no shift at all, because it was by default, and it does not hurt or disturb at all the flow of the usage of Chrome. By the way, the feature is only available on iOS, and I don't know, since I left Chrome, I don't know how is it going to integrate that in Android. But the point was, let me go back to how this feature even came, because I love talking about this. Particularly, it's very related to the Delight framework. The idea came from a technical need. when you're having plenty of tabs open, it's a technical issue. I mean,
Yeah,
the app
consuming so much RAM.
consume more, it's heavier, etc. So it started from a pure functional improvement. So how can we kill tabs? And we started to think about killing tabs and closing them automatically. But then when we started talking to users and starting to understand the relationship, the emotional relationship between users and the tabs, we started to brainstorm on more and more features that at the same time make them feel better. By the way, do you know that if you have more than 100 tabs, you have a smiley?
Yeah.
Yes. Why? Because if you start seeing more than 100, then of course you feel there's a frustration that may come as well. Like, oh, maybe I need to clean my tabs, or we really want to leverage that. We really want to make sure that the relationship between the product and the users are very
It
positive.
was 99 plus, and then it turned into a smiley.
Exactly. So maybe a smiley is like someone smiling on you to remind you that you need to.
Come on.
Come on. We've been waiting for you until 100. Come on.
Come on, really? So only when I get the smile, I actually close all tabs.
Okay, it has its effect
that's
then.
my signal.
It works on you. Okay, that was just a parenthesis story behind the smiley. But then the fact that we have been studying the topic heavily over days and months, and as a team looking to users, we start to understand what frustrates users, what makes them happy, what doesn't make them happy, and the feature came out of all that. It's not like magic or whatever. It's just the more you understand users, the more you get better product. And by the way, inactive tab is the best example we can use for the delight framework, because it started as a low delight. Let's imagine that the feature was closing tabs that has not been used for a month. That's just functional. There's nothing emotional. And we, by introducing inactive tabs group, it moved into deep delight, because at the same time, now we are honoring emotional needs as well.
Okay. That is super interesting. Like I'm starting to wish to have like a time machine, go back in time, figure out a way to be on your team working on this and like witness the actual discussions, because it's really delightful, really. So thank you for explaining.
It's hard work. I mean, it's hard discussion time.
Yes. It's definitely hard work. I could only imagine. And like my last question related to that case, but also generally, because you mentioned, of course, there is a lot of hard work put into something like this. And how do you balance between delivering some very specific impact or shipping things, shipping features and so on, and on the other side, spending that kind of time to innovate with quality, to innovate a high quality or produce a high quality innovation? So how something like this could be balanced in the grand scheme of things, like it doesn't have to be related to this only.
Okay, I will answer your question at the same time, answer another dimension. First of all, when I talk about low delight, surface delight, and deep delight, I always try to encourage people to not move away from low delight completely, because low delight will have to happen. I mean, we've been working on a lot of low delight features because they are must-haves. I mean, it's part of for the feature to be functioning well, you need to add some functional and technical features. So think about having your backlog as a 50% low delight, 40% deep delight, and 10% is enough of surface delight. That's when it comes to how to distribute the different level of delight. Now your question is more advanced, meaning that, I mean, honestly, we have plenty of, features are coming from everywhere, and how can I balance between honoring what's coming here versus what I want to innovate on? And from my perspective, the way how this did happen is by always allocating certain time of your schedule. I mean, if you are religious about, hey, I always have to have 20% of my time trying to identify new ideas that delight my users, then it will happen. If you want to do it on your spare time, product managers don't have spare time. They don't. It will never happen. So you need to be religious. First, you need to be aware that that's the only way to win. That's the way to win hearts. That's the way to win business. That's the way your product will win. And if you're convinced about that, be religious about, hey, I need to have maybe one day, depend on the cycle, but I need to have time where I focus on what could be innovative for my users. How can I anticipate their need? How can I go beyond their expectation? And that's, for me at least, if I need to answer your question, this is how it works, is to make sure that every time, by the way, when I did my planning, I always had a delivery roadmap and a discovery roadmap. That's how I always functioned. So the delivery roadmap was something that I collaborate with my engineers toward, and there is a discovery roadmap that I work with my designers and my UXR toward coming up with something new. And in my discovery roadmap, I had to investigate new ideas. That's part of the roadmap. So put it clear in your roadmap.
Yeah. That is perfect. I actually do that as well. The key, as you said, to summarize what you said, the key to this is really time management and making sure that it has a very specific existence on the day-to-day, or like the business as usual activities that you're doing. It's a part that has to happen in order to be considered. Otherwise, it will get lost between the cracks. Right.
But there's one other element that we should not ignore at all. We did not spoke about that at all, is the role of the leadership, because you can invest in all those, but if your leaders are not embedded or are not aware or not convinced, that it's much harder. So I've been lucky enough that my managers and my organization has always been extremely mature when it comes to satisfying users and going beyond, etc. So I highly recommend that leaders do talk about the topic, they do evangelize around it, and even do some extra steps. So let me give you an example. So when I've been a product leader at Google Meet, I had to create like a product strategy deck. And among the strategy element, I had pillars, like product pillars, or what we call maybe principles. And one of the pillar was delight. And that's explicit. Why? Because I wanted to be written black on white that one of our principles is to delight our users. And that has an impact, because if you as a leader believe in that and you start writing it in your official documents, your team will follow. Your team will always see it. And it's like a reminder to always, every time you build a feature, you question, is this an extra mile? Is this an extra mile? Is this going beyond, etc.?
Yeah. Well, I want to take this moment because you mentioned a couple of words, whether having delight as a strategic pillar, or you mentioned happiness a couple of times. And I want to mention a case that I have experienced, and I want to acknowledge someone, if I may. I know we are discussing you, but I want to acknowledge someone else. In one of my previous companies, when I was working in Talabat Delivery Hero, I had this manager, Rana Hagazi, and I want to acknowledge her for that, because that's the only other person in the world that I heard talk about product delight besides you, with that kind of passion, with that kind of clarity, and with that kind of belief. And I was working on, she joined as a GPM when I was there, she was my manager, and she actually started from the very start, even branding and defining the scope of our track and redefining it and turning it. It was post-order experience. She turned it into post-order happiness. And no one like really understood like, what does that mean? And then she started evangelizing this concept all across the company and defining the kind of experiences and the kind of product scopes that should happen under it. And also she like made sure that in every single scope, even the scopes that didn't really own very customer-facing user experiences under this track, that they have a delight, a strategic pillar that they're trying to achieve, whether directly or indirectly. So I just wanted to acknowledge her, because like you are using words that are very similar to what she was using, and you both are the only people that I've heard talk about this topic so passionately. I hope I can introduce you both at some day.
Happy to.
I just wanted to acknowledge her because she had a lot of impact on my career and my growth generally.
Nice.
And it's a really great thing also that you mentioned the role of leadership here. And I want to take another perspective of it. So you mentioned, yes, someone would need, or a team would need, that leadership would understand this and the importance of this, and to make sure that it's not a taboo to discuss, right? But also there might be the other factor of the company size, operation size, the size of investment, and the amount of risk a company and leadership are willing to take to dedicate resources for initiatives like these. So what would be your opinion on how to do this in different scales? Your experience was in Google, Skype, Microsoft, and Spotify. But when we are talking about startups or scale-ups, how can we adopt such mentality? Someone could adopt such mentality, having in mind also that it would be very beneficial if I'm a startup or a scale-up and I'm really trying to win, acquire more of the market share, increase my customer acquisition, all of that. The differentiator that I might win the market with would be delight, right? So this is the overarching justification compared with very limited resources, very limited financing, the need to ship faster and in smaller pieces and so on. How to balance this between different sizes and different scales?
Yes, it's a good question because yes, indeed, most of my experience has been in super large companies, but luckily nowadays I am coaching different style of industries and different size of companies. And first of all, I realized that people who reach out who wants to be coached, they are coming from different company size, so they are already aware that this is something that is gonna maybe allow them to win. And first, let me share what I think about the topic. What I think is that, don't get me wrong, it's about getting the functionality first. I'm not here to tell people, hey, only build emotional features and forget about the functional feature. Your functional feature has to be there. And by the way, we always distinguish between satisfied users and delighted users. Satisfied users are those that their functional needs are satisfied. Delighted users are their functional needs are satisfied plus plus. So you cannot talk about delight and emotional connection if your functional features are not there. Because sometimes I get the questions like, hey, when can I start to invest? However, the thing that I'm very vocal about, and I try to convince everyone around me, is that you should not start investing in delight too late. Because it's in the beginning that you start creating your brand, your perception, and this is how people will perceive the brand and the quality of the company. So think about Slack. They immediately embraced a culture of delight from the very beginning. They wanted to be a delightful product. They took nice colors and emojis and gifs, and so from the very beginning the functionality was there, but at the same time it was a delightful product. Same for Duolingo. From the very beginning they wanted to be a delightful product, so those products took a strategic path in order to be delightful. So don't come too late by injecting delight, because otherwise the perception and the relationship between users and product is already there, and it's hard to change. So that's about when to introduce this concept and this mindset. When it comes to how to balance and how to deal with these requests, etc., the beauty of the deep delight that I mentioned and described it earlier is that it's not about building additional feature. It's about building feature differently. If you get the example of inactive tabs, etc., I'm not saying that we should not build functional feature. I'm just saying, could you think about ways to enhance this feature by making it more human or make it feel more connecting with users? Let me give you an example. Like the other day, I was talking to a product leader from Dyson, and like Dyson, the vacuum cleaners, and I love those products. I do have one home, and I'm feeling proud when I use this kind of technology at home. So I asked him, I do feel myself emotionally connected with your product. What's the secret? Can you tell me why? And he told me something that resonated so well with me, because when he said it, I said, oh my God, we've been doing that as well. He said, we don't compare our vacuum cleaner to other competitors. We don't look at Electrolux or whatever other brands. That's not how we compare our product. We compare our product to how would it be better if a real person would come and clean my house.
Okay.
Could you think about that? And that shift took the company super high, because if you're comparing yourself to the best of the best, which is the human solution, then you are not thinking about adding functionality no, you will start thinking about, if I had a real person coming to my house to clean the house, then I will tell her to start with this room, and I will tell her to start with this. And this is how they adapted their latest robot, by the way, the Dyson robot, in order to allow you to give instructions and improve the product. And when he told me this example, I immediately reflected on how we did things at Google Meet. So at Google Meet, we never, ever compared ourselves to Zoom or Teams no, we compared ourselves, how would it be better if you're in a room with people?
Yeah.
And if you start thinking that way, you will say, oh, if I'm in the room, I will feel more engaged. I will feel more alive. I will be able to participate more openly. I will feel more present. But if you look at competitor, you will say, oh, Teams has just built like this together mode. I need to bring together mode into my... That's not the right way to build better product. So I always advocate for make your product feel more human by comparing to the human solution.
Well, relevant to the story, I want to thank Google Meet, and you were there at the time in COVID that you were guys first to market to roll out the blur background feature, because that was a really like an important thing. People were working from home. Homes are messy. There are other people,
Yes,
private backgrounds. So like, just blur it. I will feel more secure when this is
absolutely.
happening. It's
Yeah.
just very simple. And I was working at a company at the time that we actually stopped using Zoom and use Google Meet just because of that.
Oh, okay. That's a
So
nice info to have. No, that's the very first thing I did when I joined Google Meet. Like, I was not in a rush to come up with features, but my manager told me you need to identify the demotivators, like people coming from home, from office to home. We did a lot of studies trying to understand what are the consequences, like the emotional consequences that people are experiencing when they moved from the office to the home. And we realized that there was boredom, there was lack of interaction, there was what even maybe you heard, Omar, about the term Zoom fatigue. So all those has been a list that we came up with, and we started to look at them one by one. One of the features that we introduced, by the way, for the low engagement was reaction, like when you send a heart or something like that. It's not like a feature that will change the trajectory of the product, but it will just get people closer to each other in somehow.
I know people nowadays, very close friends, partners of mine in Egypt, and their whole company, because both of them work in the same company, that's a part of the company culture, using too many emojis inside the meetings in Google Meet.
Yeah, it become a habit.
Yeah, so it's actually part of the company culture, and like they have inside jokes about it. So again, delight, right?
Yeah.
We are almost over, but I want to ask the standard question that everyone is asking nowadays. And if I don't ask it, people will say, there's the podcast that didn't ask about AI. Maybe that would be a differentiator, actually. But like, I just have to ask it. I have to walk, with the stream. So how do you see this whole AI things now? Of course, AI has been here for a while. We could imagine what it could do for Delight, but also like the different advancements. What does it bring to the table that would take the light to a next level, especially when you mentioned that capturing the emotional connection that is the basis to how to build the light is actually something that you don't get from structured data and surveys and stuff like that. You have to connect with the person. So how to fit AI, or is there a way to leverage AI to maximize that or not?
Unfortunately, and that's again my personal opinion, when it comes to identifying emotional motivators, the human perspective will remain the best. I can't see any way of enhancing this through AI. I'm talking about, because these are unknown, by the way, and AI is really good at synthesizing the known, but not that well yet in like predicting the unknown. And when I talk about emotional motivators, as you heard me earlier, these are usually not even known by the users themselves. It's only through discussions and like guided questions that you get to experience and look at those, sometimes even from the face or from the eyes. So this human interaction will have to be present anyway. However, AI, of course, will always enhance the process once you have them, because if you have them, and that's the hardest part of the process, then you can get help in identifying the options or adding some automation to the testing later on. I know this is not answering your question, but
This is
I wanna
perfectly answering the.
No, but I want to add one more thing, which is making my life better, is because we see more and more emotion integrated into AI. So now if you're, for example, chatting with ChatGPT and you ask for a letter with a certain emotion, you can get that. And I can start to see that machines start to leverage a little bit how to answer you with a certain tone or with a certain emotional element. So these are start to get categorized. And I was trying the other day, like, hey, can you write me a letter with some humor into it? And I was surprised that it was quite humorous at the end of the
It was
day.
funny.
It was funny. It was funny, yes. But again, I think the emotion is getting more and more integrated into this. However, the human part will have to remain, and that will never be replaced. And you told me, I mean, you heard me talking about this meat humanization or the Dyson humanization perspective. So that's why our role will remain, and we are going to enhance AI with this additional touch, I would say.
Well, the reason I said it, this is perfectly answering my question, because everyone is asking the question. Most of the answers is yes, AI could do this and that, and roller coasters and jump in the air and all of that. But know what?
Maybe.
Yeah, right. But it's also, I think, very important to always to remember that the genuine connection, the genuine human connection, is something that I believe, like, no matter how AI advances, because also you could imagine AI using a camera and analyzing how my face and body language and so on, it would start to understand emotion. And that actually might lead to, okay, let's do tons of user research all at the same time, user interviews and things like that, and grab this data, analyze it, and so on. But end of the day, if we skip the step of the genuine human connection, all of these analysis of data points and all of that might come up from Gen AI one day could be totally misleading.
Absolutely.
It needs the human verification. And I think that, as you said, should never be replaced.
Think for a moment about that case study I told you about, this inactive tab where we interviewed people and some people started to feel ashamed. Think now for a moment that you are being interviewed by a robot.
Yeah.
An AI too. Would you feel ashamed? So you will miss a lot.
Because you're not human. So like,
I mean, I don't care. It's a robot looking at me. I will not even experience that emotion at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a very profound statement, and I think it might become a challenge to maintain in the coming years. But the more people like you would evangelize these concepts, the more maybe they could still remain an integral part of the business.
I think it's going to be challenging. Honestly, maybe I'm optimistic because I'm so convinced that it's the only way to win. I mean, you can choose your path. You either go with everyone or be the one. And I'm so convinced that, and it's because when I'm writing the book, I said, okay, this is my experience. What if I look at other successful? And I've been interviewing people from Airbnb or people from like Dropbox or even GitHub. I got to interview people from Atlassian and Lego and Disney. And I asked about, hey, how much do you invest in emotional connection? I realized that they are all investing in a way or another. Like, for example, Dropbox, they have a principle called cupcake. I mean, it's not delight, but it's called cupcake. And I see you smiling already because it's exactly what they want to. Yeah, they want people to feel there is a need for delight through that cupcake principle. So most of the successful company are investing into it already. And that's the path for success.
That's amazing. Every single door I open, you come up with the most amazing example and use case. And like, I'm so happy that we had this discussion. I'm delighted that we had this discussion. I hope it never ends, but like, you know, the truth of life. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for sharing these insights. I can't imagine what's in the book. If that's what came out just from an hour of discussion, I cannot imagine what's in the book. So I am very excited and really anticipating this book to be published. I really wish you good luck with writing that, because I think it would be very, very valuable and a very, very important book added to the product management discipline generally. And definitely more people need to look into it. More people need to adopt these thoughts and ideas. So I really appreciate you giving the time to be here today.
It's my pleasure. I love sharing insights. And for everyone who want to reach out, easily reachable, they can find me on LinkedIn, or I also publish some weekly newsletter about delight, so they can find some sneak peek about what's coming in the book. If you're curious, they can subscribe. Otherwise, I'm always happy and more than excited to talk about delight.
Getting in contact with Nesrine also is a delightful experience, because she's very responsive. She's a very nice person, and she's always willing to help anyone. So as she said, I second that. And of course, you will find all the links in the description for her profile on LinkedIn, the newsletter, and make sure that you follow her, and hopefully also to get a copy of the book, because it's really important to get this perspective to apply in your day-to-day product management practices. So thank you everyone for watching and staying here. Please follow the Product.Live on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Let us know who are the most interesting guests people that you're hoping for us to get as guests, and if there are any topics that you would like us to discuss. And stay tuned for the Product.Live. That's it.